Horace Blevins wrote "No kin" beside Elsie Marr's name before the church stove had even warmed her hands. The chalk broke on the last letter. A white piece snapped off and landed near the toe of Elsie's boot, where melted snow had made a dark mark on the floorboards. She looked at it because it was easier than looking at the wagon waiting outside. The wagon belonged to the Mercy Bend Poor Farm. Everybody in town knew it. Its sideboards were painted a hard brown, and the tailgate was chained because the women who rode in it were not expected to climb down until somebody told them to. Elsie had seen that wagon twice before. Once it had carried an old miner's widow after her room rent failed. Once it had carried a girl from the laundry yard who had coughed all through Sunday service. Neither woman had come back to buy thread, mail a letter, or stand in the relief line under her own name. Mercy Bend did not speak of that. The town only called the wagon necessary and looked at the road after it passed. That was how Blevins worked best. He made cruelty look like order, and he made order sound too dull to question. A woman vanished into work debt, and the town called it paperwork. A letter went missing, and the town called it delay. A hungry person owed 3 meals, and Blevins called the debt mercy. Elsie had learned to fear dull words most. That bitter winter morning, the dull words had teeth already. Elsie held an empty envelope in both hands. The paper had come back from Fort Laramie that morning with a black mark across the front. No such person, no forwarding address. Her last cousin, if he had ever been there, was gone. "No kin," Blevins said loudly, as if he were announcing weather. "No paid room, no fare, no sponsor. That makes you a county charge." Mrs. Dovey Bell stood by the soup table with her ladle still in the pot. She had heard Elsie ask for one more day. She had heard Elsie say there might be an answer from family. Now the answer lay in Elsie's hands, empty as a cup after a funeral. Dovey looked down. Blevins tapped the slate with the chalk. "County charge means county work. You can start at my wash house this afternoon." Elsie lifted her eyes then. Her face was pale from hunger and cold, but her voice did not shake when she said, "I am not refusing work." "Good," Blevins said. "I am refusing your wagon." The room went still enough for the stove door to sound loud when it popped. A teamster near the back wall glanced at the floor. A young mother pulled her little boy closer. Nobody spoke for Elsie. Blevins smiled without kindness. Women with family can refuse. Women with money can refuse. Women with husbands can refuse. You have none of the three. Elsie's fingers tightened around the envelope until the paper bent. The truth had been pressing on her all morning. It had followed her from the post office, across the frozen street, and into the relief room where strangers were counting who deserved bread. She looked at Dovey one last time, hoping the older woman might say she had worked for her supper, that she had mended coats for 3 families, that she was not a burden to be hauled away. Dovey stirred the soup. Elsie's voice dropped so low only the front of the room heard it. "I have no family left." The words did what the cold could not. They went through her. The door opened behind her. Boots crossed the floor, slow and heavy, not hurrying because men like the one who entered were used to being noticed without calling attention to themselves. Gabriel Holt had come for flour, lamp oil, and the winter salt Blevins had promised to release on account. He was 38, broad-shouldered and weathered by cattle work. He wore a black coat polished at the elbows and a hat with a crease his son had once made by sitting on it. Mercy Bend called him a widower in the same tone people used for a man with a burned field. He stopped beside Elsie, looked at the slate, then at Blevins. "Funny," Gabriel said, and his voice was quiet enough that people leaned toward it. "My children need a mother." Blevins gave a short laugh. "This is county business, Holt." "Then write this down for the county." Gabriel turned to Elsie, not touching her, not blocking the door, not speaking over her. "I have a daughter of 9 and a boy of 6. Their mother died 2 winters ago. My house needs help, and my children need a woman who knows grief and still stands straight. I can pay wages. I can put the agreement before Reverend Pike. You would have your own room, your own money, and a ride back to town whenever you ask for it." Elsie stared at him because men had offered her work before, but not like that. Not in front of witnesses. Not with the word ask placed where claim could have been. Blevins's smile thinned. "You taking a wife from a relief slate now." Gabriel did not look away from Elsie. I am offering work first. If protection must be stronger later, that will be her choice, not your joke. The room breathed again. Dovey's ladle tapped the rim of the pot. Outside, a horse stamped at the poor farm wagon. Elsie looked at the chalk beside her name. No kin, it was true. That was what made it cruel. Then she looked at Gabriel Holt's hands. They were work-scarred and open at his sides. He was not reaching for her. Your children, she said. Do they know you came here? Pain crossed his face so fast most would have missed it. Elsie did not. No, I came for salt. Then why say it? Because Blevins was about to put you in that wagon, Gabriel said. And because my little boy asked last night why nobody remembers how his mother folded his scarf. Elsie swallowed. A thread of red yarn hung from the edge of her sleeve where she had mended it with the last scrap from her sister's scarf. She rubbed it once with her thumb. If you enjoy clean, romantic Wild West stories about lonely ranchers, brave frontier women, and chosen families, subscribe and ride along for the next one. Blevins stepped closer. She owes the county for 3 meals and 1 cot. How much? Gabriel asked. That is not your affair. You made it public when you chalked her name. A few people looked up at that. Blevins heard the change and did not like it. $4.30, he said, plus wagon fee. Gabriel reached into his coat, then stopped. Elsie saw the movement and stiffened. No, she said. Gabriel's hand came out empty. Blevins laughed under his breath. Pride is expensive when you are hungry. Elsie turned to him. So is cruelty when people start counting. The teamster in the back coughed as if hiding a laugh. Dovey's eyes flicked up and down again. Gabriel said, I will not pay a debt she disputes. I will pay wages forward if she agrees to work. Reverend Pike can hold the paper until she chooses. Paper, Blevins said. You think paper makes family? Gabriel's jaw tightened. No, behavior does. Elsie did not know why that sentence mattered so much to her, but it did. Maybe because all morning men had been using words to make her smaller. County charge, no kin, work debt, woman alone. Gabriel Holt used one word that could not be faked for long. Behavior. She folded the returned envelope and slid it into her coat pocket. I will look at your house, she said. Blevins's face hardened. You step outside with him, and I will send notice after you before supper. Elsie picked up the broken chalk from the floor. She set it on the soup table, right beside Dovey's hand. Then spell my name right, she said. She walked out with Gabriel Holt, while the poor farm wagon waited empty in the snow. The Holt Ranch sat 4 miles north of Mercy Bend, where the freight road bent toward the foothills and the wind came down with teeth in it. Gabriel drove the wagon himself. He did not ask Elsie questions for the first mile. That silence was a mercy. Elsie sat with her carpetbag at her feet. Everything she owned was inside it. 2 dresses, a comb with 3 missing teeth, a packet of needles, a tin of buttons, her mother's thimble, and the red yarn from her sister's scarf. She had been carrying the bag so long the handle had rubbed a mark into her glove. My daughter is Myra, Gabriel said when the town had fallen behind them. My boy is Toby. Myra remembers too much. Toby remembers just enough to be hurt by forgetting. Elsie watched the road, and their mother. On it. He said the name carefully, not as if it would break, but as if he refused to let it be handled roughly. I am not her, Elsie said. I know. Children do not always know. Gabriel looked at her then, and the horses slowed under his hands. That is why I need someone who will tell them the truth. At the ranch, a black dog barked once and then retreated under the porch. Smoke came from the chimney, but the house looked as if warmth had not reached the windows in years. The yard was swept, the fences mended, the barn roof tight. Outside, Gabriel Holt kept things alive. Inside, Elsie sensed another story. Myra stood on the porch with a shawl around her shoulders. She was small for 9 and had Gabriel's dark eyes. Toby peered from behind her, his hair sticking up like straw. Pa, Myra said, who is she? Gabriel climbed down. This is Mrs. Elsie Marr. She may work here a while if she finds the place suitable. Myra's mouth tightened. Work at what? Elsie answered before Gabriel could. Mending what is torn, cooking what I can, washing what needs washing, and not pretending to be anyone I am not. Mara blinked. Toby stepped halfway from behind his sister. Can you fold scarves? Gabriel's hand closed on the wagon rail. Elsie felt the small question open a room of grief between all of them. Yes, she said, but I will not fold yours unless you ask me. Toby considered that. I can ask tomorrow. Tomorrow is a fine day for asking. Gabriel looked down, and Elsie saw his throat move. He carried her carpet bag inside but set it where she pointed, at the door of a small sewing room off the kitchen. The bed was narrow, the quilt clean, and the window faced the barn instead of the family rooms. This will be yours, he said. Latch is on the inside. I will have Alma bring another blanket. Alma, hired hand's widow. She helps with milking and has a room above the wash shed. She comes and goes as she pleases, which means mostly she tells me where I am wrong. Elsie almost smiled. That sounds useful. It is not always pleasant. Useful rarely is. For the first time, Gabriel's mouth softened. Not a smile exactly, but the beginning of one. It changed him more than she expected. He showed her the kitchen. The stove had gone dull. Dough sat under a cloth too long and had fallen in the pan. Children's stockings hung from a line, stiff from poor rinsing. On the shelf above the wash basin, 2 chipped cups sat beside a third cup turned upside down and untouched. Elsie looked at it, then looked away. Anna's, Gabriel said. I was not going to ask. I know. Mara watched from the doorway, arms crossed. People always ask. Elsie knelt to open her carpet bag. She took out her apron and tied it around her waist. People ask because grief makes them curious. That does not make them kind. Mara stared at her. Will you be kind? Toby asked. Elsie tied the apron tight. Not every minute, but I will try to be fair. Toby nodded as if that was better than a promise. That first evening, Elsie made cornmeal mush, fried the saved heel of bacon, and rescued the fallen dough by turning it into flat cakes on the stove. Nothing tasted like a feast. It tasted like somebody had paid attention. Gabriel sat at the far end of the table. Mara sat with her back straight. Toby fell asleep with his cheek almost in his plate. Elsie did not take Anna's chair. She chose the bench near the stove. Gabriel noticed. Mara noticed that he noticed. After supper, Elsie washed dishes while Gabriel carried Toby to bed. When he came back, he found her standing with Toby's scarf in her hands. He asked, she said. Gabriel leaned one shoulder against the door frame. Did he? Half asleep, it counts. She folded the scarf once, then paused. How did she fold it? Gabriel's eyes went to the upside-down cup, twice lengthwise, then tucked the ends in so he could pull it over his nose. Elsie did it that way. She set it on the chair beside Toby's coat. Gabriel watched as if she had moved something heavy without touching it. Thank you, he said. Do not thank me too much, she answered. It makes work feel like charity. Then I will pay you Saturday. That is better. He looked at her a moment longer. Mrs. Marr. Yes. Blevins will come. I know. I will not let him take you. The words should have comforted her. Instead, they tightened the same place Blevins had touched with chalk. Let him take you. Men spoke as if doors were theirs to open and close around a woman. Gabriel must have seen something change in her face, because he stepped back at once. That came out wrong, he said. Elsie dried the last plate. Yes. I mean I will stand against him. That is different. I am learning. She looked up. His face was tired, ashamed, and honest. That last part made her soften when she did not want to. Then we may both survive the week, she said. The next morning, Toby asked about his scarf before his eyes were fully open. Elsie had already put water on to heat. Mara came in carrying a pail too large for her, and Elsie took it before it spilled. I can carry water, Mara snapped. I saw that, Elsie said. I can also see the handle cutting your fingers. Ma carried too. Your mother had grown hands. Mara looked ready to fight, then confused because Elsie had not insulted Anna. Elsie set the pail on the bench and showed Mara how to wrap a rag around the handle. "There," she said, "now you can carry one without bleeding for pride." Mara stared at the rag. "You talk plain. I have been poor too long to afford fancy." Toby giggled into his cup. By noon, Elsie had mended a tear in Mara's sleeve, set beans to soak, and found 3 shirts that needed patches before the cold took advantage of them. She did not sing. The Holt house did not seem ready for singing, but she moved through it with a rhythm the rooms had forgotten. Gabriel came in for coffee and stopped when he saw Mara sitting at the table, letting Elsie measure her wrist for a cuff repair. Mara pulled away at once. "It was just mending." "I did not say otherwise," Gabriel said. Elsie poured him coffee. He took it and without thinking reached for the upside-down cup. His fingers stopped before they touched it. The room held still. Elsie set his cup closer. "This one is yours." He accepted it. Their fingers did not touch, but they came near enough that both noticed the space. Outside, a horse rode hard into the yard. Alma Rusk came through the kitchen door without knocking, a lean woman with weather-browned cheeks and a rifle scar along one sleeve. She looked at Elsie, then at Gabriel. "Town says you stole a woman off the poor slate." Gabriel sighed. "Good morning to you too." "Morning depends on whether Blevins is lying." "He is." Alma looked Elsie up and down. "Do you want to be here?" Elsie respected the question. "This morning, yes." That answer has a hinge on it. Most honest answers do. Alma grunted, which Elsie later learned was her way of approving without surrendering ground. Blevins left a notice at the south gate. Gabriel set down his cup and went outside. Elsie followed because the notice concerned her life, and she was tired of men reading such things first. The paper had been nailed to a fence post. County dependency claim, ELSIE-MARR. Removal or harboring of said charge subject to fine. Beneath it, in smaller writing, Blevins had added, "Household containing minor children may be reviewed for fitness if harboring is found." Gabriel read that line twice. The second time his face changed. "There it is," Alma said softly. "What?" Elsie asked. Alma looked at the children in the doorway. "He is not only threatening you." Gabriel tore the notice from the post. Elsie took it from him before he could crumple it. "No, we keep what he writes. It is not proof of anything except his reach." "Reach matters," she said. Gabriel looked at her. "So does how we answer it." "Then answer with care. Angry men are easy for men like him to lead." Alma gave another approving grunt. "She has your number, Holt." Gabriel did not smile. His eyes were on the line about minor children. That afternoon, he rode into town to ask Reverend Pike what protection a written work agreement could offer. Elsie stayed because the children had lessons, and because running back to town before Blevins had even pushed would make him larger than he was. Mara practiced sums with a slate. Toby cut strips of cloth for kindling ties. Elsie mended beside them, the red yarn at her sleeve bright against the gray. "Did your children die?" Mara asked suddenly. Elsie's needle stopped. Alma, who was churning near the stove, said, "Myra." Elsie raised one hand. "It is all right." Mara's face had gone stubborn, which meant she was afraid. "No," Elsie said, "I had no children." "Then how can Pa say we need a mother?" There it was, not cruelty, terror wearing armor. Elsie set down the shirt. "Your father was trying to stop a bad man from hauling me away." He used words that were true, but too large for the moment. Myra frowned. "Do we need one?" Toby whispered, "I need my scarf folded." Myra kicked him under the table. Elsie looked at both of them. "You need food, washing, mending, lessons, and someone who does not get frightened when grief sits down at breakfast. Whether you need me is a question time has not earned yet." Myra's eyes filled, but she did not cry. "I do not want a new ma." "Good," Elsie said. "I am not applying to erase the old one." Toby touched the red yarn on her sleeve. "What is that?" "My sister's scarf." "Is she gone too?" "Yes." "Do you fold it?" Elsie's throat tightened. No, I keep this piece because there is not enough left to fold. Myra slid the slate closer to her and started doing sums again, but her shoulders were not as hard. Gabriel returned near dusk with snow in his hat and no paper from the preacher. He says he cannot challenge a county dependency notice without the clerk, Gabriel said. The clerk is away until Monday. Alma snorted, convenient. He will witness a work contract, nothing more. And Blevins, Elsie asked. He was at the mercantile when I left. He told the storekeeper to suspend my winter account until this is settled. Alma swore under her breath. Elsie looked at the flour barrel. It had enough for 3 days if stretched, 5 if everyone pretended hunger was a virtue. Gabriel hung his coat. I have cattle I can sell. In this cold, Alma said, for half price. If I must. Elsie folded her hands in her apron so nobody would see them tremble. She had been in the Holt house less than 2 days, and already the children might go short because of her. I should leave, she said. Gabriel turned sharply. No. The word struck the room. He closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, he spoke more carefully. I mean, leaving because he threatens us gives him exactly what he wants. Staying may cost your children winter flour. They are my children. The cost is mine to weigh. Not if I am the reason. Myra stood from the table. Are we going hungry? Gabriel looked at his daughter and visibly forced calm into his face. No. Elsie knew then that his strength was not loudness. It was the hard work of not letting fear choose his words. After supper, Gabriel showed Elsie the account books. He did not hide the numbers. He did not soften them either. The ranch had cattle, hay, 2 good teams, and land enough. It did not have ready cash until spring sales. Blevins knows the timing, Gabriel said. He hauls for half the stores. If he says I am harboring a county charge, men will wait to trade. Then he owns roads more than paper. Yes. And the poor farm. He contracts laundry, hauling, and winter wood through the church committee. Women work there until their debt is paid. Does the debt end? Gabriel did not answer quickly enough. Elsie nodded. I thought not. He leaned back, exhausted. Mrs. Marr, I can offer you my name if it comes to that. A wife is not a county charge. The kitchen seemed to shrink around the word wife. Elsie stood, the chair scraped. Gabriel stood too, alarm crossing his face. I said that badly. You said it plainly. Not as a claim. It is always a claim to somebody. Then we will not speak of it tonight. You already have. She walked into the hall before anger could become tears. The sewing room was only a few steps away. Across from it stood a closed door she knew without asking was Anna's room. Gabriel followed but stopped at the kitchen threshold, leaving distance. Elsie. It was the first time he had used her given name. She turned. I want to keep you safe, he said, but I am starting to understand that a cage built for safety is still a cage. Her anger lost one of its legs. Then do not build one, she said. I will try. Try harder than that. He accepted the blow with a small nod. I will. For a moment, neither moved. The closed room stood between them like a third person. Gabriel looked at its door. I have not opened that room in 8 months. You do not owe me that. No, he said, but I think I owe my children a house where memory is not locked up like a punishment. His hand went to the key ring on his belt, then stopped. Elsie did not urge him on. She had learned that grief, like a skittish horse, could be ruined by applause. Gabriel let his hand fall. Not tonight. Then not tonight. He looked at her, grateful and ashamed. You make room for things without pretending they are easy. Easy things do not need room. That almost smile came again, sadder this time. Elsie felt the warmth of it and feared it. The next morning, she packed her carpet bag. Not all the way, just enough to remind herself she could. Alma found her rolling stockings, running. Thinking. Looks like running with slower hands. Elsie sat on the bed. If I stay, he may marry me to protect me. If he does, it will be because you say yes. You are sure? Alma looked toward the kitchen, where Gabriel was teaching Toby how to tie a feed sack. I have known Holt 6 years. He will stand in a doorway until he freezes before he steps where he is not wanted. Men change when frightened. So do women. Elsie touched the returned envelope in her pocket. Dovie Bell knew I waited for a letter. Alma's face hardened. Dovie knows most things in that relief room. She looked away before Blevins wrote the slate, like she had already known. You think she hid something? I think she was not surprised. Alma sat beside her. Blevins's wash house has women who came in with letters, brothers, cousins, neighbors. Somehow the paper always gets lost until they owe too much to leave. Elsie felt cold, though the room was warm. Why has nobody said that? Some did, then their meal tickets disappeared, or their rooms, or their men's hauling work. And you? Alma shrugged. I have one room over a wash shed and a cow with bad knees. Blevins can hurt me, but not as much as he can hurt women with no door. Elsie looked at her carpetbag. The safer path was clear. Leave before Gabriel's children paid. Walk south. Find another town. Become nobody somewhere else before Blevins could make nobody profitable. Instead, she unrolled the stockings. Where is the poor farm wash house? She asked. Alma's eyes narrowed. That is the opposite of running. I know. Holt will not like it. Holt does not own my decisions. Alma's grin was quick and fierce. No, he surely does not. They went after dinner, when Gabriel was in the far pasture checking a limping steer. Elsie left a note on the kitchen table because disappearing was cruelty, even when done for good reason. The note took longer than it should have. She wrote, I have gone to town, and crossed it out because it sounded like flight. She wrote, do not follow, and crossed that out because it sounded like a dare. At last, she wrote the truth. I am going to the wash house to learn what Blevins is hiding. I am afraid, but I am choosing this. Do not make my choice smaller by calling it rescue before you know what I found. She signed her name, then added one line for the children. Supper is covered by the blue cloth. Toby's scarf is folded. That last line nearly broke her nerve. Alma read the note over her shoulder. That will make him mad. Yes. The scarf line will make him worse than mad. Yes. Good, Alma said. A man should know what kind of woman he is trying to court. Elsie folded the note once and set Gabriel's coffee cup on the corner to hold it down. On the road to town, the wind came at them hard from the west. Alma drove the small buckboard, taking ruts as if she had a grudge against each one. Elsie held her carpetbag in her lap because she had learned that a woman carrying a bag was harder to call stolen. She had also tucked Gabriel's torn supply notice inside it. Not as proof to save them, but as a reminder that Blevins did not only threaten women without doors. He threatened any house that opened one. If this goes wrong, Alma said, you get behind me. No. That was not a question. Nor was my answer. Alma cut her eyes toward her. You are half-starved and stubborn as a fence post. And you are armed with an opinion sharp enough to cut rope. We all bring what we have. Alma laughed once, then grew serious. I was wrong about you. Elsie looked at her. When Gabriel brought you in, I thought, here comes another sorrow for that house to feed. You may still be right. No, sorrow sits, you move. Elsie held that quietly. Praise made her uneasy when it arrived too warm, but Alma's came wrapped in thorns. That made it easier to trust. At the edge of Mercy Bend, they passed the poor farm wagon standing behind Blevins's office. Its tailgate chain hung loose. Elsie looked at it until Alma turned the buckboard toward the wash house. She had thought fear would lessen once she chose action. It did not. But it changed shape. It stopped being a hand on her back and became a stone she could carry. At the poor farm wash house, steam clouded the windows so thick the building looked as if it were burning from inside. Women stood over tubs with red hands and bent backs. The smell of lye hit Elsie before the door opened. Dovie Bell was there, sorting folded shirts into baskets. Her face changed when she saw Elsie. You should not be here. People keep saying where I should not be, Elsie answered. It has made me curious. Two women looked up from the tubs. One had a bruised yellow mark on her cheekbone. The other was old enough to be Elsie's mother and thin enough to snap in a hard wind. Dovey moved toward the door. If Blevins finds you here, he'll say you came back under county charge. Did my cousin's letter come here? Elsie asked. Dovey's mouth closed. There was the answer. Elsie stepped closer. Did it? Dovey looked toward the yard. I could not change what it said. What did it say? That your cousin died in May. His wife had gone east. There was no place for you. For a moment, Elsie could not hear the tubs. She saw only the empty envelope in her own hands, the black mark, the chalk. You let me wait, she said. Dovey's eyes filled. Blevins said if I gave every woman every letter, half would run before accounts settled. Accounts that never settle. You think I do not know, Dovey whispered. You think I like it. Elsie's voice hardened. Liking it was never the question. The older washwoman spoke from the tub. Mrs. Bell keeps the letters in the flour bin under the blue cloth. Dovey turned on her. Ruth. Ruth lifted her chin. I am tired. Those 3 words changed the room more than shouting could have. Elsie walked to the flour bin. Dovey did not stop her. Under a blue cloth lay 6 letters tied with string. 6 names, 6 women. 6 possible roads delayed until debt could become a wall. Elsie held them up. These are not Blevins's. The door opened. Blevins stood in the steam with 2 men behind him. No, he said, but the women are. Alma stepped in front of Elsie. Careful. Blevins ignored her. Mrs. Marr, you have just walked into my yard of your own will. That makes this simple. I came for stolen letters. You came to interfere with county property. Ruth laughed once, dry and bitter. There it is, property. Blevins pointed at her. Back to work. No one moved. The moment stretched. Then wagon wheels sounded outside, fast over frozen ruts. Gabriel Holt came through the yard with his team lathered and his coat open at the throat. He swung down before the wagon fully stopped. His eyes found Elsie first. Relief came into his face, followed by anger, followed by the harder work of mastering it. Are you hurt? He asked. No. Did you choose to come? Yes. He breathed once, then I will be angry later. It was so unexpected that Ruth barked another laugh. Blevins stepped between them. You are hauling women out of county custody now. Gabriel looked at the letters in Elsie's hand. I am hauling stolen mail to the church. You touch those women, and I will have your children reviewed before Sunday. The washhouse went still. There was the blade Blevins had kept hidden for the right moment. Elsie saw it strike Gabriel. She saw him imagine Mara and Toby questioned, judged, maybe placed with some committee woman until spring. His hands curled once. Then he looked at Elsie. Not for permission to fight, for a reason not to be led. Elsie gave him one. Take Ruth first, she said. She is shaking. Gabriel turned from Blevins and helped Ruth into the wagon. It cost him. Everybody saw it. To turn away from an insult in front of men who expected anger was not weakness. It was a kind of strength Blevins could not use. For more clean Western romance, rejected brides, widowed ranchers, and brave frontier women finding home, subscribe to the channel. Blevins snatched a paper from his coat and tore it across. Gabriel's supply order. Flour, salt, coffee, lamp oil. The pieces fell into the mud. No account, Blevins said. No hauling, no credit. We will see how noble your house feels hungry. Gabriel helped the second woman into the wagon. We will. Elsie climbed up beside Ruth, letters in her lap. Gabriel's voice was low when he spoke to her. When we get home, we will talk about dangerous choices. Yes, Elsie said. We will talk about yours too. His mouth twitched despite everything. They rode back in cold silence. At the ranch, Mara and Toby ran from the porch until they saw the strangers and stopped. Elsie climbed down, gave each woman tea, and put the letters on the table. Gabriel stood by the torn supply order in his hand. We have enough flour for 3 days, he said. 5, Elsie answered. Not if people eat. People have survived worse than thin biscuits. They should not have to. No. That single word held more between them than comfort would have. After the women slept near the stove, Gabriel found Elsie in the barn. She was brushing one of the team horses because her hands needed work that was not trembling. You could have been trapped there, he said. Yes. You left a note. Yes. I wanted to tear Mercy Bend apart board by board when I read it. She kept brushing, and yet the town still stands. Barely. She glanced at him. He was not smiling. You came, she said. Of course I came. Because you promised safety. Because you mattered before I promised anything. The brush stopped. Gabriel looked almost startled by his own words, but he did not take them back. Elsie felt the barn, the horse, the cold, the grief all sharpen around that sentence. Men had called her useful, capable, poor, kinless, county charge. He had said she mattered, and it frightened her more than Blevins's wagon. Gabriel, she said carefully. I know, he stepped back, hands open. I am not asking tonight. Asking what? Anything I have not earned the right to ask. The horse blew warm breath against Elsie's sleeve. She looked at the red yarn there. You may ask why I am afraid, she said. He waited. Because if I love your children and they decide I am not theirs, I lose them. If I love this house and you decide I was only winter help, I lose it. If I love you. She stopped. Gabriel's face changed. Not triumph, never that. Wonder restrained so it would not crowd her. If you love me, he said, voice rough, then I had better become a man who knows what to do with such a gift. She turned back to the horse. That was almost too pretty. I will try to be plainer. Please. I want you here, not because of Blevins, not because of the children only, because when you are in my house, I remember how to tell the truth without making it hard. Elsie closed her eyes. That is plain enough, she said. The next day, Mercy Bend began to squeeze. It began before breakfast with a boy from the mercantile riding up on a mule and refusing to come past the gate. Gabriel went out bareheaded, pulling on his coat as he crossed the yard. Elsie watched through the kitchen window while Myra rolled biscuit dough too thin and Toby tried to count how many eggs were left in the crock. The boy held out a folded paper at arm's length, as if trouble could stain him. Gabriel read it without speaking, then he looked toward the house. Elsie wiped flour from her hands and went outside. If it concerns the food in that kitchen, she said, it concerns me. The boy flushed. Mr. Klein said I was to give it to Mr. Holt. You did, Elsie said. Now I am standing here. Gabriel passed her the paper. It was short and cowardly. The mercantile account would be suspended pending review of Gabriel Holt's association with a county dependency matter. No flour, salt, coffee, lamp oil, or kerosene could be released on credit. At the bottom, in smaller writing, someone had added, Mr. Blevins advises immediate settlement. Elsie folded the paper once. Tell Mr. Klein, she said to the boy, that children still eat while grown men decide how brave they are. The boy looked alarmed. Gabriel's mouth twitched. Tell him I will come in with cash when I have it. Tell him nothing else unless you want Mrs. Marr to add to the message. The boy kicked the mule and left. Elsie waited until he was out of earshot. You should not have enjoyed that. I enjoyed only the part where Klein hears it in the boy's voice. That is the part I meant. The small humor did not last. Gabriel took the paper back and looked toward the barn. I can sell the Roan team. The good team. The team with the most cash in it. And then how do you haul hay? With the bad team and prayer. Elsie looked across the yard at the horses. She had learned their names in 2 days. Buck and Roman were big, red-brown, and steady under a load. They were also the team Gabriel would need when the snow settled deep. Do not sell the team because of me, she said. Not because of you, because of Blevins. That sounds noble until the children are cold. He turned. You think I do not know that? The sharpness struck them both. Gabriel took off his hat and pressed his fingers against the brim. "Forgive me," he said. "I have spent 2 years failing quietly. Public failure is new." Elsie wanted to answer gently. Instead, honesty came first. "Then do not make me the place where you put it." He looked at her, and to his credit, he did not defend himself. "You are right. I am tired of being right in ways that cost breakfast." That brought the sadness back into his face. "So am I." Inside, Toby dropped an egg. It hit the floor with a soft crack, and he burst into tears as if he had broken the last good thing in the world. Elsie and Gabriel both turned. Myra stood over the mess, her face fierce and white. "Don't cry, it was only one." "It was breakfast," Toby sobbed. Elsie came in first. She knelt, picked up the pieces of shell, and wiped the floor with a rag. "Toby," she said, "when food is short, crying over an egg is allowed for 1 minute. Then we learn how not to waste the next." He sniffed. "How long is a minute?" "Long enough for your sister to stop pretending she is not scared." Myra's mouth opened. Gabriel made a low sound, almost a warning, but Elsie did not take the words back. Myra's eyes filled. "I am not." "You are," Elsie said. "So am I, so is your father. Scared is not the sin. Making everyone else carry it alone is." Myra looked at Gabriel. Gabriel looked back at his daughter with a pain so open Elsie had to look down. "I am scared," he said. "Mrs. Marr is right." Toby wiped his nose with his sleeve. "Pa gets scared." "Often. But you are big. That only makes my coat larger." Toby thought about that, then laughed weakly. Myra did not laugh, but she stopped holding her breath. Elsie took one less egg for the pan and added cornmeal to stretch the rest. It made breakfast plain, but it fed them. Gabriel ate without complaint. Myra asked for the pale lesson again. Toby put the broken eggshells into a tin for the chickens and announced he had saved breakfast after all. That morning changed the house more than a sweeter scene would have. Elsie was not a visiting angel. She was not a replacement mother drifting in with endless patience. She was a woman who could tell frightened children the truth and still put food in front of them. Gabriel saw it. Elsie knew he saw it because he stopped looking grateful and started looking careful, as if gratitude was too small and wanting was too dangerous. Near noon, Alma came in with more bad news and a sack of turnips she had stolen from her own winter pile. "Blevins went to Sutter's place," she said. "Told him Holt's children may be reviewed if he keeps a county woman under his roof." Gabriel set down his coffee. Sutter believed him. Sutter believes anything that keeps him from taking a side. Elsie sliced turnips at the table. "What does review mean?" Alma's face changed, and Elsie understood before anyone answered. Children could be used like paper, like flour, like wagon fees. Anything a man loved could become a handle. Gabriel said, "It means a committee can visit, ask questions, decide whether a widower's house is fit." "Has it happened before?" "Not to me." Myra stood in the doorway with Toby behind her. They had heard enough. Gabriel turned toward them. "No one is taking you." Myra's chin lifted. "You cannot promise if men can write papers." The words landed like a slap because they were Gabriel's lesson returned to him. Papers could reach, so could lies. Elsie put down the knife. "Then we make the house able to answer questions without fear." Myra looked at her. "How?" "We clean what needs cleaning. We count food honestly. We put lessons on the table. We open rooms that should not look hidden. We do not pretend grief makes a house unfit." Gabriel's eyes went to Anna's door. Myra followed his gaze. No one spoke. Then Toby said, "Can we open Ma's room if we don't move her things?" Gabriel looked as if the question had come from the grave and the future at once. "Yes," he said after a long moment, "we can." Elsie took the turnip knife again, but her vision blurred. She had not meant to push that door, yet sometimes a house knew when a door was already opening. The mercantile refused Gabriel flour unless he paid cash. The blacksmith sent word that Blevins had withdrawn the hauling order Gabriel needed to settle an old shoeing bill. Reverend Pike accepted the stolen letters, but would not read them aloud in church without the county clerk. "He fears Blevins," Alma said. "He fears choosing wrong in public," Elsie answered. Same result. Ruth and the other woman, Sarah, stayed through the morning. Ruth had a nephew in Cheyenne. Sarah's letter said her sister could take her after Christmas if she could get stage fare. Both had been kept working in Mercy Bend for debts that grew each week. Elsie wrote down what they remembered. Days worked, shirts washed, wood hauled, meals charged twice. Not as legal proof. She knew better than to build the whole fight on figures men could argue. But counting gave the women back the shape of what had been taken. At noon, Myra brought Ruth a blanket without being told. Ruth touched the girl's hand. Thank you. Myra looked uncomfortable. It was in the chest. Kindness often is, Ruth said. Myra fled outside. Elsie watched from the stove. Gabriel watched Elsie watching, and the look between them was brief but full. They both saw the danger. A child could open a door in a lonely heart faster than any promise. That was why they had to be careful. That afternoon, Gabriel did what Elsie had not expected. He opened Anna's room. He did it with Myra and Toby in the hall, Alma pretending not to cry behind them, and Elsie standing far enough away that nobody could mistake her for the reason. The room smelled of cedar and dust, dresses hung on pegs, a hairbrush sat on the bureau. A quilt lay folded at the foot of the bed. Myra made a sound like a hurt animal. Gabriel knelt beside her. I closed this because I thought keeping it still would keep from losing more. I was wrong. Toby slipped his hand into Elsie's without looking at her. Elsie looked down at his small fingers. She did not squeeze first. She let him decide. After a moment, he held tighter. Myra turned to Elsie with tears on her face. Do you want her room? No. Because you do not like it. Because it is hers, Elsie said, and because I already have a room. Myra wiped her face. The sewing room is small. So am I compared with grief. Gabriel looked at Elsie over his daughter's head. The look was not gratitude. It was something deeper and more dangerous to her peace. That evening, with snow starting again, Elsie found him on the porch. Opening the room cost you, she said. Yes. Why today? Because Blevins thinks he can decide what makes a family unfit. I thought perhaps I should stop helping him. She stood beside him, close enough for warmth, not touching. Your children did not need a mother because honor is gone. No. They need adults who do not make them carry all the grief. He nodded. And you, what do you need? The question slipped past her guard. A place that does not vanish when I need it, she said. Gabriel looked out at the snow. Then I will not promise forever tonight. Men use forever too cheaply. What will you promise? Tomorrow morning, flowers somehow, a fair wage Saturday, and no marriage word unless you bring it back to the table. She laughed then, a small laugh but real. That may be the strangest courtship speech ever made. He turned toward her. Is that what this is? Her smile faded, but not from fear. It might become one. He looked as if the porch had shifted under him. Before he could answer, a lantern appeared on the road. Dovie Bell rode in alone. Gabriel moved in front of Elsie by instinct, then caught himself and stepped beside her instead. Elsie noticed, so did he. Dovie climbed down slowly, carrying a bundle under her coat. I brought the rest, she said. Elsie did not move. The rest of what? Letters, 2 account pages, names of women he sent to the wash house after their people wrote for them. Gabriel's face hardened. Why now? Dovie looked smaller than she had in the relief room. Because Ruth's hands were bleeding today, and I heard myself tell her to scrub faster. My mother raised me better than what I have become. Elsie wanted to forgive her. That frightened her too, because forgiveness offered too soon could become another way of letting people keep what they stole. Did you bring them because you are sorry, Elsie asked, or because you are ready to pay? Dovie flinched. Both, she whispered. Then tomorrow you will stand in the relief room and say what you hid. Blevins will take my kitchen. Yes. I sleep there some nights. Elsie looked at the woman who had looked away while chalk marked her life. Then you should have thought of doors before helping him close them on others. Dovie bowed her head. Gabriel said nothing. That silence meant more than support would have. He was letting Elsie decide the shape of the cost. Dovey held out the bundle. "I will stand." Elsie took it. The next morning, before they could harness for town, Blevins came first. He came with the poor farm wagon, 2 hired haulers, and a deputy who looked unhappy to be there. The wagon wheels cut hard lines through the snow. Myra and Toby watched from the kitchen window until Alma pulled them back. Gabriel stepped into the yard. Elsie came after him with her coat buttoned and her carpetbag in hand. Gabriel saw the bag. Pain moved through his eyes, but he did not ask. Blevins climbed down. "Elsie Marr, by county dependency notice, you are ordered into this wagon." The deputy shifted. "Horace, the clerk, ain't here to sign removal." "The notice stands until challenged." "By whom?" Elsie asked. Blevins pointed at Gabriel. "Not by a man harboring you for his own use." Gabriel took one step, then stopped himself. Elsie stepped past him. "Say that again." Blevins smiled. "You think people do not know what a widower wants when he takes a woman in." The yard went silent. Elsie felt Gabriel's shame and rage behind her like heat. She also felt the children somewhere in the house, and the women from the wash house standing near the barn, and Dovey on the porch with stolen letters under her shawl. This was the moment Blevins wanted. Make Gabriel fight, make Elsie look kept, make the children witness ugliness and call the house unfit. Elsie walked to the poor farm wagon and put her carpetbag on the seat. Gabriel's face went white. "Elsie," he said. She turned to him. "Do you have my wages?" For a heartbeat, he did not understand. Then he did. He went into the house. Blevins laughed. "Wages won't change a dependency claim." "No," Elsie said. "Choice will." Gabriel came back with a small cloth purse and an envelope. His hand shook once when he set them on the wagon seat beside her bag. $4 for work," he said. $2 for fare. The team is hitched. Road is open." Blevins scoffed. "Dramatic nonsense." Elsie looked at Gabriel. "If I ride away?" Every person in the yard seemed to wait for his answer. Gabriel's voice broke, but did not fail. "Then I will send your trunk after you, and thank God you were under my roof as long as you chose to be." Myra cried out from inside the house. Alma murmured to her, but did not let her run. Elsie climbed onto the wagon seat. Blevins reached for the purse. "County funds recover first." Elsie slapped his hand away. The crack of it sounded across the yard. The deputy looked down to hide his face. One of Blevins's haulers took a step back. Elsie took the reins. Her hands were cold but steady. "Ruth," she called. "Sarah, if I am county property because he fed me 3 meals, what are you after 6 months?" Ruth came from the barn doorway. Sarah followed. Behind them came 2 more women Alma had fetched before dawn. Ruth lifted her red hands. "Unpaid." Sarah said, "Held." The third woman said, "Written for and the letter hidden." Dovey stepped off the porch. Her face was gray. In one hand she held the relief kitchen key, in the other the tied bundle of letters. "I hid them," Dovey said. "Horace told me to. I helped him keep women working after their families wrote." Blevins spun toward her. "Shut your mouth." Dovey flinched, but she did not stop. He counted meals twice. He charged wagon fees to women who never rode. He held letters until debts grew. "Lies," Blevins said. He lunged for the bundle. Gabriel moved, but Elsie was faster. She snapped the reins, and the team shifted just enough that the wagon wheel rolled between Blevins and Dovey. He stumbled back, cursing. Elsie stood in the wagon. "You wanted me in your wagon, Mr. Blevins. Now look at it." Everyone did. The poor farm wagon stood behind his. Gabriel's team stood before Elsie. Ruth and Sarah stood beside it, not inside it. Dovey stood with letters. The haulers stood with their hands empty. "Who is getting in?" Elsie asked. No one moved. Blevins turned to his haulers. "Load the wash tubs. These women ride back." One hauler scratched his beard. "My wife takes in washing from Mrs. Bell's kitchen. If this is true, she won't touch your contract." "I pay you," Blevins snapped. "Not enough to drag women in front of Holt's young ones." The other hauler nodded. I am out. Blevins looked at the deputy. Do your duty. The deputy's mouth tightened. My duty is to assign removal. You ain't got one. Coward. Maybe, the deputy said, but I ain't your hauler. Gabriel stepped beside Elsie now, not in front of her. Your hauling credit at my ranch is done. Your laundry contract with my hands is done. Any steer of mine going through Mercy Bend will go with a man who does not chain women to soup. Alma walked from the porch holding a small account slate. And the hands heard him. We sign with another hauler by noon. Blevins looked from face to face. He was counting, Elsie realized, not guilt, not shame, loss. That was the only language he trusted. He made one last try. Mrs. Marr has no family, no legal standing, no husband, no blood here. Toby broke from Alma then, but he did not run to Elsie. He ran to Gabriel and grabbed his hand. Mara followed slower. She took Gabriel's other hand, then she looked at Elsie on the wagon. Pa, she said, voice shaking, if she wants to go, we let her. Gabriel closed his eyes once. Yes. Mara looked at Elsie. Tears ran down her cheeks. If you want to come back, we open the gate. Elsie could not speak. This was not a child doing a man's work. This was a child repeating the costly lesson her father had chosen first. Blevins heard it too. He heard the claim fail. Elsie sat and took up the reins. For one long breath, she faced the open road. She could leave, truly leave. She had wages, fare, witnesses, a team under her hands and no man touching the bridle. The road south lay pale between fences. It could take her to another town, another stove, another slate where maybe nobody had written her name yet. She thought of the returned envelope, her cousin gone, her sister's scarf cut down to a thread, her mother's thimble wrapped in cloth. She thought of every room she had entered knowing she might be asked to leave before morning. Then she thought of Gabriel setting money on the wagon seat with a breaking heart, because he would rather lose her than keep her wrong. She turned the team in a slow half-circle. The wagon wheels cut a new mark through the snow, away from the south road and toward the Holt gate. Ruth began to cry. Sarah covered her mouth. Alma swore softly and wiped her face with her sleeve. Elsie stopped beside Blevins. I am not in this yard because I have no family left, she said. I am in it because this family proved the door opens both ways. Blevins had no answer that did not sound small. Dovey walked to him and held out the relief kitchen key. I will give this to Reverend Pike. Then I will stand in the churchyard and name every letter I hid. You will lose your room, Blevins said. Dovey's eyes filled. Then I will sleep under a roof I did not buy with silence. It was the first thing Elsie had heard from her that sounded clean. Blevins climbed into his wagon alone. One hauler unhitched his own horse from the team and led it away. The other followed. The deputy stayed where he was, watching with the tired look of a man who had almost helped the wrong side and knew it. Blevins took the reins himself. The poor farm wagon rolled out of the Holt yard empty. Not defeated by a paper, not saved by an official, emptied by women who stood up, by a man who risked what he loved, and by a choice that could be seen from the gate. The fallout did not wait for spring. By afternoon, Reverend Pike stood in the churchyard with Dovey beside him, and the letters spread on a crate. He looked older than he had the day before. I should have asked harder questions, he said. Ruth answered yes. No one softened it for him. Dovey named the women whose letters she had hidden. She named the flour bin. She named the blue cloth. She named Blevins's instruction. Then she took the relief kitchen key from her apron and placed it in Ruth's hand. Until the committee chooses someone clean, Dovey said. Ruth looked at the key, then at Elsie. I don't want his kitchen. Elsie said, it is not his now. Blevins did not appear, but his losses did. 2 haulers withdrew from his winter work before dusk. The church women took their laundry from his wash house. Gabriel and 3 other ranchers signed a hauling order with a man from Pine Draw. The deputy delivered notice that no removal would happen without the clerk's signature and a public hearing. Those were formal things, they mattered. But the moment that mattered most to Elsie came at sunset, when Dovey stood before her outside the church. I am sorry, Dovey said. Elsie was so tired she could barely stand. I believe you. Hope flickered in Dovey's face. Elsie raised a hand. That does not pay it. Dovey lowered her eyes. No. You will help Ruth right every family. You will sleep in the church loft until the women decide whether you can return to relief work. You will not hold letters again. Dovey nodded, crying silently. Elsie wanted the tears to move her more. Maybe someday they would. For now, she needed them not to be the price. Gabriel waited by the wagon with Myra and Toby. He did not come to hurry her. He did not call her home in front of people as if the word could rope her. When she reached him, he held out the reins. Your road, he said. She looked at the reins, then at his face. You are very determined to make me drive away. No, he said. I am determined that if you stay, neither of us can lie about why. Myra climbed into the back with Toby. Alma rode her own horse behind them. The town watched, but quietly now. Elsie took the reins. At the fork south of town, she stopped the wagon. The left road led to Pine Draw, then Cheyenne if a person kept going and did not freeze first. The right road led to Holt Ranch. Gabriel sat beside her, hands folded so he would not reach for the reins. Before she chose, Elsie looked back toward Mercy Bend. The town was only a dark line now, but she could still feel the relief room inside it, the slate, the soup pot, the way people had lowered their eyes because pity was easier when it did not have to stand up. She had wanted for most of that day to be better than needing them. That was pride, and hunger had taught her pride was often a coat with holes in it. She did need people. That was the dangerous truth. Not Blevins, not the county, not a man with a paper saying she was useful until debt swallowed her, but people. A woman could be strong and still need a door that opened when she knocked. She could be capable and still need someone to remember how she took coffee. She could survive alone and still be tired of making survival her only proof of worth. Gabriel waited through all of that without asking what she was thinking. At last, she said, If I come back tonight, the town will say you won. I know. Blevins will say I traded one claim for another. He will. Some part of me will fear that on bad days. Gabriel took that in like a man accepting whether he could not move. Then on those days, I will put the wagon back on the road. She looked at him. Not because I want you gone, he said, because I want fear to have less evidence. The answer was so plain that it undid her more than any vow could have. And if you grow tired of proving it, then you will have wages to leave and a house full of people angry at me for being a fool. From the back of the wagon, Alma said, That part is already arranged. Toby whispered, Are we allowed to be angry at Pa? Myra answered, Only if he is a fool. Gabriel rubbed both hands over his face. I see my authority is thriving. Elsie laughed. She had not meant to. It came out shaky, but it came out alive. Then she sobered. I am not Anna. No. I will do some things wrong. So will we. I may love them and still have days I want to shut my door. Then the latch should work. She closed her eyes. The sewing room latch had sounded small the night before. Now it sounded like a promise with iron in it. You are making it difficult to run, she said. I am trying to make it honest to stay. The reins lay warm in her gloved hands. The horses waited, breath rising white. Elsie thought of her sister's red scarf, cut down to one thread. She had carried that thread because it was proof she had once belonged somewhere. But maybe belonging was not only what remained after loss. Maybe it could also be what honest people built with their hands open. I have not asked you, he said. I noticed. I want to. The snow had stopped. The world looked scrubbed and uncertain. Then ask plainly, Elsie said. Gabriel took off his hat. The cold touched the silver beginning at his temples. Elsie Marr, will you come home tonight because you choose it? Take wages because you earned them. Let my children love you at the pace you set, and allow me to court you properly when you are ready. Toby whispered from the back, That was a lot of asking. Mara shushed him, but she was smiling through tears. Elsie looked at the south road. She made herself look long enough that nobody could say she had not considered it. Then she turned the wagon right. Gabriel let out a breath that sounded like pain leaving. Yes, she said. To tonight, to wages, to the children at a truthful pace, to courtship. He put his hat back on because his hands needed something to do. And marriage. She glanced at him. Ask me after you survive courtship. Mara laughed first. Toby joined. Then Alma behind them gave a cheer that startled the horses. Gabriel smiled then, fully, and Elsie saw the man grief had been hiding. At the ranch gate, Mara jumped down and opened it. Toby stood beside her with his scarf folded over his nose, ends tucked just as Anna had done and Elsie had learned. Gabriel did not touch the reins. He waited. Elsie drove through. She stopped in the yard and looked at the house. Smoke lifted from the chimney. The sewing room window caught the last light. The door to Anna's room stood open now, not emptied, not erased, just open. Mara came to the wagon step. Elsie. Not Ma, not yet, not because she had been told. Elsie looked down at her. Will you show me how to wrap the pail handle again tomorrow? Mara asked. It was a small question. It was also a place set carefully without saying so. Yes, Elsie said. Tomorrow is a fine day for asking. Gabriel helped Toby down, then stood beside the wagon and offered Elsie his hand. She took it, not because she needed help, but because she wanted the contact and was no longer ashamed of wanting. His hand closed around hers, steady and warm. Welcome home for tonight, he said. Only tonight. Tonight is the promise I can keep before supper. She smiled, then keep it well. Inside, Elsie did not take Anna's cup from the shelf. She turned it right side up and washed the dust from it. Then she set it beside the others, not for herself, not as a claim, but because memory did not have to sit upside down to be honored. Gabriel watched from the doorway. His eyes shone, but he did not look broken. Mara placed 4 plates on the table, hesitated, then added a 5th for Alma. Toby put his scarf on the chair beside Elsie's sewing room door, trusting it would be folded by morning if he asked. Elsie hung her coat on the peg nearest the stove. No paper made that a family. No wagon made it a prison. No chalk word on a slate could reach this far unless they let it. After supper, Gabriel walked her to the sewing room door. The children were already asleep. Alma had taken the wash-shed room after declaring the house too full of feelings for her taste. Gabriel stopped at the threshold. I will ask one thing, he said. Elsie leaned against the door frame. Only one. For tonight. Ask. May I court you by doing tomorrow's work beside you, instead of speaking pretty at you? Elsie thought of the relief room, the chalk, the wagon, the open road, the way he had placed fair money where she could take it. Yes, she said, but you may speak a little pretty if you do not overdo it. He laughed softly. It was the first easy sound she had heard from him. Then he took her hand and raised it, not to his mouth, not for a show, only between them. Good night, Elsie. Good night, Gabriel. She closed the sewing room door herself. The latch clicked from the inside, not as a barrier, but as proof that the room was hers to open in the morning. Before she slept, she untied the red yarn from her sleeve. She did not put it away, and she did not tie it to anyone else's need. She looped it around the key to her sewing room and set the key on the washstand where morning light would find it. In the morning, when the first light came gray over the yard, Elsie woke to the sound of a pail being dragged badly across the porch. She opened her door. Mara stood there with the pail in both hands and a rag wrapped around the handle, crooked but determined. I did it wrong, Mara said. Elsie looked past her to the kitchen, where Gabriel was burning the first batch of coffee and pretending not to listen. On the table beside the stove lay a small envelope with her name written cleanly across the front. Then we will do it again, Elsie said. Mara held out the pail. Elsie took one side. Mara held the other. Together they carried it into the kitchen. Gabriel did not reach for the pail. He did not praise Elsie as if kindness had bought her. He only nodded toward the envelope. Saturday wages, he said. A day early because yesterday used up more courage than work usually asks. Elsie opened it. $4 lay inside, counted fair, with 2 silver coins beside them for fare if she ever chose the South Road. Her throat tightened, but her hands stayed steady. You left the fare in. It belongs there, Mara looked from one adult to the other and wisely said nothing. Toby came in with his scarf half folded and sleep in his hair, but even he seemed to understand that the important thing on the table was not breakfast. Elsie picked up the fair coins. For one breath, Gabriel's face went still. Then she set them back in the envelope and placed the envelope beside the stove. Not hidden, not returned, not refused. "Keep the coffee from burning," she said. "I am going to teach this pail a lesson." Gabriel smiled, and the smile did not ask for more than she had given. Elsie carried the pail with Mara to the wash bench, then came back for her key. The red thread shone against the iron. She put the key in her pocket, took the coffee pot from Gabriel before he ruined it entirely, and stood at the stove by choice while the house made room around her. Subscribe for more clean, romantic Wild West stories where rejected women, lonely ranchers, and frontier families find home by choice.